Greetings! I've talked about anime, especially in the UK, before, and sometimes I wonder if one of the biggest hurdles that anime being legal in the UK can have to struggle with is being legal in the UK. Now, firstly, let me say what this video is not. This is not a justification or advocating piracy. It's also not a dig at any particular UK distributor or even any particular overseas distributor, and it's not even necessarily a dig at the UK anime industry, because none of these problems that I see are unique to anime or unique to the UK, but they're all linked to being a legal entity, and they're all problems that compound themselves in the UK industry. Um, I mean, one obviously has to be market size. We're going for a small market compared to some other countries. Now, obviously, this isn't something that the industry can do anything about. And it's not even necessarily one of the faults, but it's the underlying problem that I think a lot of the rest of the stuff can compound. In that we're a small market, so anything that reduces the amount of people willing to buy is going to have a much bigger impact than losing or putting off the same amount of potential sales in America or Australia or France or whatever. A lot of it, to be honest, I think comes to licensing restrictions. Sometimes it can be down to format. The Japanese licensors will say this cannot have a Blu-ray release in the United Kingdom, or if you're going to release a DVD, it must be re-authored in PAL rather than just using NTSC. And the problems with this are that if you're like me, someone who pretty much only watches Blu-ray these days, no Blu-ray means no sale. And most people who still use DVD, their players are not only capable of playing back NTSC discs, but playing back discs from any region. And because there are problems with doing a PAL transfer, again, that's immediately potentially lost sales, because the people who are still going to want DVDs, they're either going to import or go without. Ditto for Blu-rays. You can't make somebody buy the version that they don't want. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're automatically going to pirate something. It just means that either they'll import it, which is bad for the UK industry, or they flat out won't bother with it at all, which I still think has bigger issues, because it doesn't matter how someone watches something. If they watch it, they talk about it, they encourage their friends to watch it, however you watch something, whether it's round at a friend's house, on a legal stream, or via a fan sub, if you really find yourself re-watching something and you're the kind of person who is willing to pay for stuff, you're going to buy it. Doesn't matter how legal you are, if you've not watched something and you're not 100% sure whether or not you're interested, unless you've got a crap ton of disposable income, you're not going to buy it. So again, the licensing restrictions can have problems. Similarly, especially to do with Japanese music, but not only, there can be issues with music rights. Something that was fine for the Japanese release won't get cleared for the international release, but then meaning that suddenly the international release is not the version that was originally shown, and that can put off some people. Similarly, and this ties into something else. If there's a collector's edition, chances are the non-Japanese version, but especially the UK version, will probably not have the soundtrack. If the Japanese version does have the soundtrack and people have got that aforementioned crap ton of money, they're going to import the Japanese version. Especially because sometimes the Japanese version of a show or a film will actually have English subtitles. Now, again, if you got the crap ton of money, you might buy the Japanese version for the soundtrack and an English language version to actually understand what the hell's going on. But some people are going to go one or t'other. That's just the way it goes. And this ties into the thing about imports, in that a lot of times, especially in the UK, imports are either seen as being superior or occasionally cheaper, or sometimes both. Again, because of the market size, the UK distributors can't afford to kind of cover every base of interest. But that means that you will always get some people for whom the UK version just isn't what they want. Maybe maybe the UK version is a collector's edition, and if like me, you don't like boxes, you don't like art cards, you don't like any of that extra crap, and there is an American standard edition which works out, even including shipping and potential customs charges, slightly cheaper, it can be worthwhile. Similarly, if you like your fancy collector's edition and the UK edition is either a standard or just not fancy enough for your liking, again, if you've got the aforementioned crap ton of money, you're going to import. The other thing is holdbacks. Something will come out in one country at one time, and another country another, and another country another. That doesn't work as well in this interconnected age. It just doesn't fly as well, because you're expecting people to maintain their interest in something once it's already on the shelves in another country. Which means that either someone's going to import it, someone's going to pirate it because they can't afford the import but they can't be bothered to wait, or they're going to hold out and occasionally get bored and buy something else, or hold out and then life happens. It is not the fault of, in my case, for example, the UK anime industry, that my car has had a lot of problems in the last 12 months. However, anything that didn't come out before my car started to go wrong, I've had a much lower chance of buying. If there are some things that had come out earlier, I would have bought them. But because they couldn't come out fast enough, through no fault of the industry, I didn't buy them because I'd already spent the money on getting my car roadworthy. At which point there wasn't any money left. Little things like being able to get to work, being able to keep the car on the road, being able to eat, pay the basic bills. Those come first. And obviously when things go wrong, those then force themselves to come first. And, yeah, I will make my purchasing decisions based on my financial situation at any given time. And, again, it's in hindsight you can go, crap, I shouldn't have bought that Blu-ray box set because the car's just shat itself, but it's too late at that point. However, you can go, the car's just shat itself, looks like I won't be buying that Blu-ray box set. If it's out faster, I've already bought your product and it's too late for me to do anything when something goes wrong. And these are all things I think that stem from effectively being legal, because there are things that, kind of, whether it's imports that don't have the same restrictions as, well, not so much imports because you can still have problems importing something, but if the overseas version of something isn't subject to some of the same things and that's seen as superior or cheaper or faster, people are going to go for that. Or if the pirated version can do something that the legal version just cannot, see stuff um, like music. You know, an unlicensed version doesn't care about music licensing, so it's always going to have the version as broadcast or the version that is done in Japan. They don't have to clear anything with the Japanese licenses. So, if they want to go by a more kind of fan accepted naming convention than the one that the licensors think should be used, see stuff like Digimon, again, the legal version is automatically at a disadvantage by doing the right thing. Um, Format, okay, not maybe so much format, but but resolution. If something is DVD only, but the fan sub version is based from the Japanese Blu-ray, yeah, I could buy a DVD to play on my Blu-ray player through my HD TV, or I could download a 1080p fan sub that would play fine through my media center onto my HD TV. Um, Again, putting aside legal and ethical reasons, from a purely technical standpoint, yeah, it's kind of obvious. And like I said, even if you don't pirate stuff, you're not necessarily going to buy the inferior product. You'll just not buy it. That's the thing. I don't really get much in the way of fan subs anymore. What that means, though, is that if the UK edition of something isn't to my liking, I don't watch it or buy it at all. And that's still a lost sale. But I'm completely within my legal rights to not buy something. And also, I'm most definitely in my legal. Well, I'm then in, for example, Mango Animatsu's legal rights to then not buy a or grab a dodgy copy illegally. I'm doing right by them by not pirating, but I'm also doing right by me by not buying something that I don't agree with. Similar for stuff by MVM, stuff by Anime Limited. All of the UK distributors have different things, but all of them have things which mean that one of their particular products might not be to my liking. And whereas previously I might have grabbed a fan sub or imported, these days I can't afford to import, and I'm not bothering with quite as much in the way of fan subs. I'm just watching other stuff or spending all my time and little bit of money that I've got playing video games. Now, the other thing, which again, this is not particular to anime, but is particular to being a part of any kind of legal video distribution in the UK, is the BBFC. Having to get stuff, put through to have that little age certificate on that says, yes, we think that this is suitable for whatever age group, which means that adds time. See holdbacks for delays, delay it too much and people will import or lose interest. That can mean that stuff has to be cut because there's certain things that just are not allowed in official UK releases. But if it means that the official UK release is inferior to the American or the original Japanese release, again, it means you're either going to import it or just flat out not bother. Or at least some people will. Not everybody, but some people will. And remember, as I said before, the UK's got the smaller market size. So that small handful of people could make all the difference because, if apparently the usual minimum print run that has to be done, last I heard, at least for a Blu-ray, is 1,000. So obviously, if you want to break even on that, you want to sell all of that 1,000. If you have 100 people pissed off, that's might be the difference between something being a success and a flop. If you've got a market the size of the US, 100 people being a bit pissed off and deciding not to buy something is not going to make anywhere near as much of a difference. But the other thing is, it's just the sheer cost of it. It adds, it adds cost. You have to pay per minute plus a small flat fee to get the BBFC to look at something. Which then means that, that's an initial overhead just for releasing something in the UK. But that's an extra crap ton of money that a company has to spend just to be legally allowed to sell something in a smaller market that can't easily absorb any additional things. And one that is not quite a problem yet, but could be going forwards, which is going to cause problems for the UK industry as a whole, not just anime, but anime being more niche, it's going to have problems when it comes to where Blu-rays are pressed, when it comes to where a lot of the packaging is done. This is done in continental Europe. Yeah, once we're out of the EU, if we go the hard Brexit route and lose access to the single market, that's going to just mean that companies importing things from the continent is going to be more expensive. But that means that if you are dealing with things that are physically manufactured on the continent, the prices just went up. Or will go up hugely. So, yeah, sometimes I think that there are going to be problems that kind of like being legal means that you're subject to things that fan subs and illegal streams aren't. Selling things officially in the UK means that you're subject to restrictions that, that the American or Australian or original Japanese products aren't. And all these little things can chip away at at the customer base. And when you've got a small customer base, can you afford to do that? But then, what is the answer? Because as I said, maybe one of the biggest problems selling anime legally in the UK is that there are a lot of hurdles involved just from being a legal anime selling entity in the UK. The enemy of the industry is other parts of the industry, whether it's the UK entertainment industry, whether it's the Japanese entertainment industry, whether it's the UK government. There's just all the things involved in being legal make it harder to sell a product because you can't always sell the product that the customers actually want to buy. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if there is an answer. I suspect that there probably isn't. But it's sort of something I've wanted to comment on for a while, that, companies can go on all they want about, please do stuff legally. But the problem is sometimes the legal product has to make compromises that the excuse me, has to make compromises that the fandom doesn't want. And I don't know that there is an answer for that. And with that, and before I choke to death, see ya.